Nobody has their finger on the pulse of New York City in the reporting world, I think, like you do. You're a believer in New York being the center of everything. And I say this in,
It's
I'm
not so much a
fast.
believer. It's just, I mean, I like, it's like I believe that the way I like believe I should breathe air. I
I
mean, it's just a
understand that.
fact.
And I get it. I used to have, I remember one time having a fight with
I'm
Brian
saying I'm
Williams
not
about,
making that claim. It's just how
no,
I
no, no,
see
no.
the world.
But you'll appreciate this. I remember one time they were showing the some local parade on the nightly news in New York. And I said, why are you doing that? Are you going to show the parade in Chicago and in St. Louis? And Brian goes, well, 1 in 9 Americans have a connection to New York City. And I said, so that means 8 in 9 Americans don't.
That feels very
And it
low to
was
me.
right. So there was this whole back and forth. But I set this up because this is one time where I am going to agree with you. What happens in New York City is going to reverberate around the world in this election. I think this is as big of an election as we've had that's not a presidential in a long time. I mean, the Mamdani election, I think, is potentially this significant for the future of New York City. But I'm curious if you share that view.
You know, it's interesting 'cause I think it will really reverberate, although sort of for the wrong reasons. Like as is often true,
Sure.
like what's happening in New York is very weird and local. Like the path through which this guy shot up to the Democratic nomination and now
Mhm.
can't be stopped because his, because he's facing the worst candidates in the world is like very specific.
Mhm.
And I think not necessarily emblematic of what's happening if you look at the Senate primary in New Jersey across the river where Mikey
No,
Sherrill
it's
won.
not really.
Like
Yeah, it's not
it's
really
not
a movement.
representative of anything except that you really do see and you just feel it here that the only people who have any energy are is the real left, is the hard left. In the same way, I think that you could feel in Republican politics that the only people who had any energy was the Trump movement. Like that, and
Oh,
and there's passion and there's energy and it's young people and they're knocking on
yeah.
your door and they have figured and they and the thing that Mamdani really has, which I think the kind of previous iterations of the young left really didn't, is how to communicate with working people, with people who don't
Mhm.
share their ideology, with people who aren't interested in ideology, with people who don't want to learn some new language to talk about the world and talk about politics. Mamdani is not trying to persuade you of anything in particular about gender. He's not really interested in talking about the like control of the means of production. He's not
Mhm.
like, I mean, if you read the if you're like if you are someone who like thinks maybe capitalism is good, you should like and you read the DSA manifesto, like your hair will stand on end. But
Mhm.
Mamdani's not out there reading from the DSA manifesto. He, he's in some ways a very normal politician. I think in a way, I think the tradition that he's in New York is actually the last socialist mayor we had, who was Fiorello LaGuardia.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if he will pull that off, but LaGuardia was divisive in similar ways, actually was of the left in a pretty deep way. But also was like relentlessly focused on like building stuff and moving stuff around and cleaning up the garbage, which is what these municipal offices actually are.
No, I mean, look, I've always said I think the most impressive thing to me in government is how much garbage New York City deals with every day. I
And how
find it.
badly, we just put it in the fucking street. Like we
Oh,
just literally, like we just dump it in the street. No one else in the
and
world does this. We just
and it
piles
just
of
gets
garbage in the streets, and then the
and
rats eat it, and it smells. It's terrible.
but for the most part, it gets cleaned up every day.
Yeah,
For
no,
the
that is
most
true.
part, it's gone. Like it's one of those you're like, holy, I don't know another community. We sit here and
Yeah,
I always sit here and we love to beat the crap out of government. Government doesn't do this, government doesn't do that. And then I'll say, I'm going to give you a piece of paper and $1 bill. Can you take it across country in 3 days?
yeah.
Our government actually pulls that off for less than $1. And it's quite remarkable. And I sort of feel that, we take for granted sometimes these mundane things that government does almost without us noticing.
Yeah, and in New York government, I mean, I mean, I guess, I mean, there's a shocking amount to me of optimism about Mamdani in town among people who
Well,
I
there's
would
no
be,
choice but to have optimism because he's going to win.
yeah,
Isn't that
and
the
I think,
problem? I
and
mean,
I
Cuomo and
think that's
Adams. I
right.
mean, you sit there, you're like, I
And
cannot believe that New York's political elite just sat on the sidelines while Cuomo came in and ran. What was anybody thinking? You have two of the leaders of the Democratic Party are both from Brooklyn, and they just what did they put like earmuffs on? They wanted to pay no attention to what was happening. It is the biggest sort of leadership failure of a political party that was happening right in their backyard, and they paid no attention to it until it was too late.
Yeah, it's true. And Schumer and Jeffries could have said, "Hey, the guy is this other person," and almost anyone else. And Cuomo became the establishment candidate. And now we're in this situation where the people who everybody in New York hates most, which are billionaires who spout off on Twitter all the time,
And they're going to
are
fund these
basically
guys?
saying, we are gonna take not actually enough money to make it work, which is, by the way, $1 billion. That's what Bloomberg spent,
Right.
but a totally trivial amount of money, which isn't even enough to, like, because New York is so expensive, so big. Like, you want to buy TV ads in New York, they're gonna put like $15 million in. That's what like T-Mobile spends in like 15 minutes. Like, it's just not a
It might get
meaningful
you a
amount of
couple of
money
taxi cab
to try
ads.
to bribe you to take some disgraced elderly gentleman, whether it's
Mhm.
Adams or Cuomo. They're deciding which one to try to force down the throats of the kind of, of New York voters who are kind of cynical about that exact move. Like, I actually think when people saw flyers and saw TV ads from these super PACs supporting Cuomo, I think regular voters thought, "Oh, this is who the billionaires are trying. This is the corrupt old guy the billionaires
Right.
want us to vote for." Like, I think that's a real dynamic and problem. And Mamdani, like Trump, who was a very underfunded candidate in certain ways, pointed to the big money supporting his opponent and said, "Look at this," and people kind of got it.
Yeah, I mean, I never. I mean, it was like, look at the choices.
Yeah.
I never, and I don't know. Is it just New York? Is New York City government just not sexy enough for well-intentioned people to run for? I mean, what
Well,
happened?
no, there were
What happened to the
others.
woman who finished second
Catherine
last time?
Garcia. I mean, she
Catherine
was a
Garcia. She seemed to me like, I go back. I think the sanitation department's the most impressive department in New York City. So you're like, you know what? You get that done. All right. I'm just,
yeah, she was. I mean,
get it
But
done
hold on,
there.
she was a solid civil servant, widely viewed as either the
Yeah.
second or third best sanitation commissioner of the last 10 years. Like, okay.
Fair. Okay.
We're not talking about like and actually there were decent candidates. Brad Lander, the comptroller, good candidate. There
Right.
was like a young YIMBY candidate. The energy is on the left. And
Right.
Mamdani like captured, there was something this wasn't like an accident. He would have been, I think, in a different constellation with a stronger
Mhm.
establishment contender than the Republican Party. Mamdani might still have won. Like, there was something really real happening there.
If Hakeem Jeffries weren't basically the next potential Democratic speaker, I think he is the candidate that people want to run for mayor. No, I mean, in
Maybe,
fact,
although I think he's an
5 years ago,
unknown.
I thought he was that would be his next move.
Yeah, he could have been. He is sort of an unknown figure in New York. It's interesting because he's a very important national figure, but he's not. He's always been a kind of behind the scenes player, not a
Right.
public figure. Like, he's a classic legislative leader in that way. And I
Right.
think he could probably walk down the street in many parts of New York and no one would know who he was.
Interesting. And that's just because he's just not forced himself to be a New York presence the way
Yeah,
even a
that's right.
Schumer did. Right. Schumer
Oh,
wanted to
right.
be
Where
a
Schumer
president.
is unmissable. Yeah. My favorite line about Schumer, which is some roast. John Corzine, then the senator from New Jersey, said that sharing a media market with Chuck Schumer was like sharing a banana with a monkey. First, he eats the banana, then he flings his feces at you.
Oh my God. That's a pretty
Schumer did
good
not
one.
appreciate it.
I'm sure he didn't. I'm sure he didn't. Are you surprised he still wants to be the Senate leader? Like, it does feel like he's staying past his sell by date. And when you stay past your sell by date, you risk, as Joe Biden is finding out, you risk really harming your own legacy unnecessarily.
Yeah, I mean, I think he probably feels like a lot of these guys, a lot of legislative leaders in particular. The Biden thing, executives are different, but legislative leaders, you do build this kind of very specialized skill set, which is these relationships with, 48 or 52 very powerful, very eccentric people.
Right.
And you think no one else could do this job. And like, you see why he thinks that, right? Like,
Sure.
that's a really strange, hard job. Like,
No, it is, because
and
you
it's,
just described it well. Most of its time is talking people off cliffs.
Yeah, like, and right, and
Right.
like, how do you get Chris Murphy to shut up about Palestine today? Like, I don't know, right? But you do it because like there's this other thing in Connecticut. Like, who
Yeah.
knows? But it's knowing that kind of stuff about these specific people, and then being able to raise
Huh.
tons of money. And so I think he probably thinks nobody else could do this job.
Um, if AOC runs for president, what you sort of are I, the Chuck Todd of 10 years ago would have said, nobody from New York City is going to be elected president of the United States. Well, obviously
Much
wrong.
less a backbench
Yeah.
socialist congresswoman.
Right, exactly. I'm not ruling anything out for all the reasons you just described about Mamdani, which is,
Yeah, no, me either.
Trump did everything the exact opposite of what Republicans thought they should do in order to win in 16, and he won. And more importantly, he's reanimated a party. The Republican Party is now larger than the Democratic Party, and they did it by going harder right, not softer right, which was, of course, what was Mitt Romney.
Yeah.
The post Mitt Romney recommendation was, no, you
Yeah.
got to get softer. No, he went harder. And he diversified the party, and he made it different. For whatever you think, it's a different Republican Party, but he changed it. He changed the electorate more than he's changed the elected officials. So I'm not going to sit here and say that. So, what do you expect? What kind of national candidate do you expect her to be? And do you assume, by the way, I assume she's running. Do you?
I guess I think that she'd be crazy not to think hard about it. And I think part of it is, she initially had a really, I think, hard time dealing with the spotlight. Like there were a lot of threats against her, a lot of that I think really rattled her personally. And and you saw her kind of step back. And I do think like running for president is, it really changes your life forever. And I don't know where she is on that. I think that's a real consideration for anybody.
And she may want to have family, and this is like she's in prime family mode.
People underestimate the extent to which like real personal decisions are a factor in it. I do think she shares with Trump at this point the fact she's a real celebrity, and that she's actually like she's better at this than people realize. Like people,
I think she's one. I call her a political. I like to use the phrase political athlete. I think
she's the real thing.
Yeah, she's one of the best political athletes
in a big room, in a small room. She also shares with Mamdani, and people don't realize this because, like with Trump, she's out there talking all the time. Whatever the most divisive thing she says as with Trump, gets clipped. And so with Trump, what his enemies missed was how funny he was, because all you would see was some clip of him saying something like totally bananas. Half the time, it was in the context of a joke. And part of the joke was that the media is going to clip this and take it out of context, but you, my true follower, are in on the joke with me, right? And so, like, I think people missed a lot of his appeal because they processed him through short clips. And similarly with AOC, you can find clips of her saying very, very strident stuff. She actually shares with Mamdani, like, her style of communications is not hyperpolarizing. It is about it's not about finding the sort of buzziest buzzword. It's the most alienating way to speak to people. She's very, very talented. And I do think that the question is, which I think with Mamdani, there was also a sense, and I just like hear this from people who I had a very specific conversation with somebody we both know who's voting for Mamdani, that I was like legitimately shocked that she is voting for Mamdani last night. Yeah. Like not a person of the left, like at all, like a person of the, active person of the Democratic Center. And I do think, there's this sense of just like this is like particularly after the sort of Biden train wreck, we got to sweep everything aside. The whole system is broken. We got to blow it up. We need new people. This guy is an instrument for that. And I think, the question is how many Democratic voters.
I remember a lot of Republican voters, by the way. I heard a lot of Republican voters in 16 going, I know who Trump is. I know he's full of shit, but you know what?
Yeah.
We need to blow this up, and he's going to blow it up.
He's a hand grenade, right? Like,
and they want
it. Like, I don't like him, but he's a hand grenade, and we're going to throw this into Washington.
And Mamdani might be the hand grenade. That
and AOC as a presidential candidate, like I think that if you just hate everything, and that like all the sort of establishment hates her, that just like even if you think all her policies are dumb, you could imagine people thinking like, wow, she's really going to make those people on TV mad.